So if we're thinking in terms of dimensions, and there being many dimensions to the same, to the, sort of one on top of the other, um, and you can think of these as vibrations or frequencies or whatever you want. I think those are actually pretty accurate ways of thinking about them. And so they're all one on top of the other, just like, okay, going back to the flatland thing, the 3 dimension is actually over and around the 2-dimensional plane. Now, if we were the Flatlanders, right? If we're this is an analogy, if we're the 2-dimensional little creatures bobbing around in our 2-dimensional plane, and there was a higher dimensional being, a 3-dimensional being, outside of our plane, and they were, obviously we can't see their 3-dimensional world, we can't even necessarily see all of them, but when it comes to, if the 3-dimensional creature was trying to get the Flatlander to want to go to his 3-dimensional realm, okay, how would he even explain it to the Flatlander or describe it in a way that the Flatlander can understand? He'd basically have to come up with a 2D analogy or a 2D representation of his 3D realm, and that could be described as, a circle or any sort of like flat area within the flatland in the two-dimensional plane. And suppose he said, the Flatlander can't necessarily even see the 3D creature, but he can hear him talking, right? So let's say he's a little 2-dimensional occultist talking to this 3D spirit, right? So if the 3D creatures got the Flatlanders to believe in that there was these places they could go outside of, their little world in the middle of the flatland plane, and that there was these other amazing worlds that they could go and visit and experience, maybe even, more godlike experiences of reality. And they were just millions of light years away on the plane, and it was so hard to get there. And so all the Flatlanders get together and they start building their little flat technologies and flat ships and trying to figure out a way to get over to the little plane areas that are millions of light years away. When in reality, maybe the 3D creature has the realm that he's talking about is really all around them, right above them, and they just can't perceive it. And that's basically, I think, when we get into planets and things like that, and like the motivation of a secret space program, quote unquote, from a biblical point of view, understanding the Luciferian agenda, is that it's dimensional here. Yeah, so it's dimensional in the sense that they're not trying to get to Mars, they're not trying to get to some rock out in space, they're trying to get humans to desire to go to higher dimensional, you call it higher states of consciousness, or higher, frequencies or dimensional realms, spiritual realms. We could almost just use those terms interchangeably, I think. And this to me bears out when you start looking, the more you really look into the whole UFO issue. These are interdimensional ships. These are interdimensional beings, right? I mean, it's nothing new. So again, I don't understand why, if you're rejecting the whole idea that, right, rejecting this whole ancient aliens kind of concept, or that aliens are really aliens from other planets, then why do you need to cling to the planets? Why do you need to cling to space if you're rejecting the idea that they're from way out there? Why are they trying to get us to go out there? They're not trying to get us to go out there. They're trying to get us to go up. And this, I think, and so that all I'm trying to say is that thinking of the flat, I think a lot of people just really instinctively reject even looking into the flat Earth. It's because I think it's suffocating to them. I think ideologically it seems small. It seems like space is what they've been clinging to as their way of interpreting all these conspiratorial things, and I'm saying that the flat Earth doesn't necessarily reject them doesn't mean that there isn't a secret program. And if anything, it brings them all together in a way that I think makes more sense out of them than anything else, in terms of everything that people are talking about with things like CERN and all these other particle accelerator projects going around. CERN's not the only one, but all these things having to do with quantum physics and speculations about peering into other dimensions and creating wormholes and interdimensional travel and time travel, all these things. It's dimensional, right? So if we think about all that as really probably more of what's at the core, and the thing is that you can start to incorporate things like craft. I mean, if UFOs and things are craft that have interdimensional capabilities, then there doesn't necessarily have to be this big divide between facilities and things like that are colliding particles, and then other underground bases or whatever with ships and things like that, or even stuff that they're sticking up in the sky, in the atmosphere, even if it's within the firmament. They're still doing things that have to do with piercing holes in the dimensional veil. And I do believe that at the point, I think one of the whole end game goals here is that, so if there's all these dimensional realities to the cosmos, even within the enclosed system, personally I tend to look at this idea of the firmament as being more than just a barrier that, yes, it's most likely, if it exists, it's a physical barrier in the 3D physical sense, but probably one that transcends all the higher dimensions, so that even if an angelic being or a demon or whatever, even if they're able to go around, say, concrete walls in our own dimension, the firmament is something that is very unique, and that it goes all the way up. It's like, I don't know if it's a dome or a ball or whatever, even maybe it's a hyper dome or hyper sphere or whatever, but it's something that those entities can't just pass through anytime they wish. It is like the ultimate wall, and only God can open the gates between the whole spectrum of dimensions contained within that system, contained within the cosmos, and the higher heavens, the highest heavens, where the throne room is. And this goes back to the Bible and Enoch and all that. So I think that's the end game when the Bible talks about Satan wants to ascend. I will ascend to the Most High. I will sit on the throne. And he basically wants to invade the heavens and dethrone God and crown himself God over everything. Okay, so that's a dimensional goal, right? He's not. There's nothing Satan's ultimately going to accomplish by getting humans or alien gray hybrids or whatever they are, whether they're physical and spiritual or a mix of both. And and I'm not saying those things there isn't a reality to them, but ultimately Satan's not going to dethrone God and become God by getting a fleet of starships to Mars or to some distant galaxy, because he knows God's not there. He knows where God is. God is in a higher dimensional plane than even the highest of the angels, right? So that's ultimately where it has to go. And so there is a secret space program, in my opinion, but I think we just have to start thinking it's a hyperspace program. It's an interdimensional space program rather than just physical ships.